All right. Good afternoon. We'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's webinar that is going to be entirely centered on new data validation routines that are built into the data center for the Illinois Data and Benchmarking tool that was originally built and continues to be operated in support of the Nina M. Lowy 21st Century Community Learning Centers program in Illinois. I'd like to welcome you all. My name's Alan Clemens. I'm the Illinois Technical Lead and the Director for the Illinois Interactive Report Cards Office at Northern Illinois University. We serve as the technical leads for the state project, which essentially means that we continue to operate the data support system that supports the grant program statewide. And in addition, we facilitate the submission of data on behalf of the sites and grants around the state to the federal data collection system, including some data cleaning and and validation efforts. So happy to be with you today. We typically do a biannual presentation on updates to the software system. Most of the updates for this particular cycle surround this subject. Our offices have been with the 21st Century program in Illinois for over 20 years. And, as I outlined, we develop and maintain that Illinois data collection tool. I'm going to be moving along with some speed, trying not to go too quickly. The format for today, I'm not entirely certain precisely what the communications indicated, but the format that we're striving for today is something in the range of 30 minutes here for presentation of the updates regarding the new validation routines that are built into the tool, and then leaving a significant time in the second portion of this hour for Q&A, for what we'll call virtual office hours, in the sense that if there are any of you that have extended questions about the tool itself or data submission processes, that you could follow up with us during that period of time to get answers to questions that you might have. The Illinois Data and Benchmarking tool is located in the My IRC suite of applications. Again, this isn't meant to be an overview of the technicalities of the tool itself, but for those of you that may be connected to new grant operations, there are materials that are available, both video and work aid materials, to support your attempts to identify how to get access to that tool, in addition to the various features that are within it. But in short, the access to the tool is through the login screens that are connected to the Illinois report card at illinoisreportcard.com. But again, for any additional questions, feel free to contact us at the email addresses that circulate for this program, 21stcclc@niu.edu, or feel free to call us at 815-753-0978, and we can facilitate any concerns or issues that you might have with a grant admin's access to the tool or use of the tool in general. The primary use of the tool on a term-over-term basis, however, is the use of the data center. This is the portal that you use at the end of each grant term to enter your summary data into the system. The federal offices are becoming even more picky about the nature of the data, the orientation of the data, and the fact that we're required to collect these data on an annual basis for summer terms, as well as for fall and spring for active centers. The recent communications have indicated that summer data are going to be incorporated into annual data analyses, at least at the federal level, in perhaps a more active way than they had been previously. And we've got new advisement, with regard to the collection of summer data. For most of you, that won't change things. Illinois has been out ahead of many states in the country in terms of the structures that we've had in place for collecting, cleaning, verifying, and submitting data for all of the terms that centers operate out across the course of a calendar year. But we certainly will send out communications to advise you if there are any additional changes that you need to be aware of. What we're focusing on today is that there's a marginally new workflow for the data center that's been implemented to reduce data entry errors at the point at which they're entered. We know that sometimes follow-up on data entry errors can be more problematic the more time passes between data entry and our attempts to verify or clean those data. And so we've attempted in this last development cycle to build verification structures into the data entry tool so that you can be warned at the point of entry that your data fall outside of acceptable federal parameters for submission. You won't see any of those, you won't see anything change as a result on this introductory page to the data center, but many of the resulting underlying screens will have new subroutines that will be warning you if there are errors in data submission. So if we move to the next screen here, the data entry now occurs in an ordered fashion. The previous approaches to data entry through the data center allowed you to record data entry in any of the categories at any time during that process. But at this point, the data center is going to strongly recommend moving in this ordered fashion because there is a new construction of validation rules that starts as early as the data you enter in the center overview and then builds as you move through the subsequent stages. And so if you haven't entered your activity data, for example, before you attempt to upload your attendance file will be rejected and a number of errors will be displayed because it will, in all likelihood, violate the validation rules that it needs to pass to be accepted in the system. So you'll begin with the center overview and a review of your center overview, and then move more or less through this particular order in the progress of your data entry in the data center. In the center overview, your first step will obviously be to do a cursory review of the descriptive information that's available at the top of that page. The data center, if you recall, includes information about the center's address, the center's director, other descriptive information, whether or not it's offering ELT programming, other things like that. But the primary concern that we have for today's presentation and for the validation rules has to do with this portion of the screen that's down at the base of the page that asks for your count of unique participants, your count of total paid staff, and your count of total volunteer staff. The unique participant count is fairly straightforward. It's a head count that needs to match the number of students that you're reporting as participants with your roster file when you uploaded your attendance file. So, it's a line for line head count match. So if you indicate that you've got 49 participants here on your center overview, we'll be expecting to see 49 lines of student data in your attendance file. And you won't be able to exceed 49 lines of data in the attendance file. In this example here, we put 36 on screen. The same thing would apply. The paid staff and volunteer staff numbers here will be matched up as validation rules against your staffing inputs. And staff are this will be explicitly outlined in one of the future slides, but it's worth mentioning here again. It's up to you to determine, but the staff, these categories are mutually exclusive. So if you had a volunteer staff member that you hired a part of the way through the term to participate as paid staff with your program, then they should be categorized as paid staff, in their entirety. This again is just a head count, the number of folks that you have that are paid and those that are not. Here on the next slide, we've outlined that specifically. I apologize, I forgot that I built this second slide in. Anyway, match the students listed in your roster file, and again, we tried to commit all of this to slide so that not only was it present here in the recording, but that you could print out these slides if you preferred to at a later date, and these are all work aids for the data submission process. Step 2 is delineation of activities. You're going to be offering the number of distinct activities offered, and that's the same as in previous terms, the total number of hours the activities were offered for, and the total number of participants within that category. Now, new within the system is validation that checks these things. So first, we've provided, again, an example for you of the way these are counted. There's been a great deal of confusion for this over time. In this example, we have math tutoring for an hour each workday for 10 weeks, test taking skills workshop for a single 2-hour session, and an ELA for second language learners series, 1 hour, 2 times a week for 5 weeks. Alan attended all math tutoring sessions, test taking in both ELA sessions. Mike attended 10 math sessions and all 10 ELA sessions. So under academic enrichment, the distinct activities would be 3. It's 1 for each named activity. The total number of hours offered is the one that few people have gotten wrong as time has moved on. It's a 1-for-1 count of the number of offers hours in total across all of the programs in that category. So it's not how many hours are offered weekly or daily or what's the average number of hours. It's just the total number of hours offered across all activities in this category. The total number of participants is one, again, where there's frequently been confusion. In this case, it would be 5. Each student counts once within each of the unique activities. So in our example here, Alan counted once for math, once for test taking, and once for ELA, and Mike counted once for math and once for ELA. So you're going to count any individual participant once, whether they attended 1 of 50 sessions or 50 of 50 sessions in this particular reporting category. There's a fairly simple validation that's built in here. If I go 2 screens back and we talk about the total number of participants, we can't know, and thus there is not a validation rule that we have the capacity to build for the number of distinct activities offered, nor for the number of hours those activities were being offered, although we have had to contact grants in the past because the number of hours that were reported for a particular category were more hours than existed in the number of weeks that the program was offered over the course of a term. And so we still do manual reviews of the number of distinct activities offered and the number of hours that are reported, so that if there appears to be an egregious mathematical error, that we still can follow up and contact your offices to clean those data. But the validation rule that's built in automatically at this point is that the total number of participants in any given category cannot exceed the total number of distinct activities offered in that category times the number of unique participants. So if I move back to this 700 participants would be the logical limit for this site in any one category. because there were, well, yeah, no, in academic enrichment, I apologize, because in academic enrichment, we're claiming 35 distinct activities offered and for a total of 20 hours of programming that would result in, this 35 hours. Oh, no, I apologize. 700 wouldn't be our logical limit here. It would be the 35 here times the 36 unique participants. And I apologize, I'm not going to do that math in my head. But that's 1,000, just over 2,100 unique participants. No, it's not. I'm not going to do that math in my head. And I'm being recorded. This is terrible. But it's 36 times 35. In step 3, you'll be validating staffing. This again is headcount, as we referred to before, for paid and volunteer staff. Each staff member only counts in one category: administrator, college student, etc., and one classification, whether they're paid or volunteer. The system will be doing a new validation this term and calculating the cumulative total of the staff you enter across the entire staffing section, and that can't exceed the staff counts you provided in each classification. So if you recall, in the data center, there are a variety of categories of staff: administrators, college students, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, several categories of staff member to report. And for each of those categories, you can report, the system will validate to require you to report fewer than the total number of staff you entered in your center overview. In addition to that, the total across all of your paid staff count entered numbers can't exceed that center overview total. The total across all categories of your volunteer staff count cannot exceed the total in the data center, the site overview. Family member and data entry has no validation. Family members can be duplicated when reported. In other words, if 5 family members attend session 1 of a particular activity and attend additional sessions of that activity, they can be counted for every time they attend. But again, the only validation here is that the submission site for the federal system will only accept whole numbers and only accept numbers between 1 and 999. So if you have an extraordinarily robust family participation program, touched the mouse, family participation program, you can contact our offices, or we can figure out a way to put a comment in with it. But we have not had family participation regularly recorded at that level or reported at that level, just indicating that sometimes the federal data entry limits, we can provide comments to indicate that they might need to be adjusted. On the attendance file, again, the attendance system accounts for whether or not your site and or grant have access to GPA data and or student behavior data from the public school districts that you're participating with as partners. If you don't have access to either the GPA data or student behavior data, please answer no at the top of this screen to these leading questions, and you are encouraged to add comments as well to represent why you're moving that to a no answer. That will change the expectations for the system. You can see these attendance file templates that are available to download. If you don't have suspension data but do have GPA, do have GPA but don't have suspension, or don't have either, when you answer those questions properly at the top of the file, it will change the highlighted templates that are available for you to download, so that you download the roster file template that matches the conditions that you're operating your grant and sites within, And it will adjust the expectations of the system as you upload those templates back into the system, or upload those files back into the system. As mentioned before, the total number of records in the attendance file can't exceed the number of unique participants that you entered in the center overview. And no student can be reported in the number of hours in program column in that template for a higher value than your total of hours of activities at the center. So again, those earlier data submission fields are setting up validation rules for your roster file submission at this point. And you'll see these green numbers that are in the header in each of these areas are updated live. And so as you change your center overview numbers, they will change here in the advisory notes that you're getting on screen when you go to fill in later sections. And similarly, when you enter your activities data, again, this 20 hours here is based on the total number you reported for all activities at your center. So earlier data feeds or data entry moments are creating feeds that are updating the screen and making you aware of the data validation rules that are present for each of these areas as you move through to them throughout the process. The last area is teacher survey, or no, I guess there's one more, teacher survey results. Here you're entering the number of teacher surveys distributed and collected, both in total and broken down for students in each participation band. So it's great to track and retain your copies of your distributed surveys. But certainly if you are tabulating them and storing them or something like that, make sure to tabulate them by participation band based on the number of hours for each of those students. As well as counts for improved rates of homework completion, participation, and observed observed classroom behavior. So the new validations in the teacher survey section include that the total number of reports distributed can't exceed your total number of students. And while that may seem logical, we have to say the teacher survey results data entry is the most inconsistent data entry on an annual basis that we observe across the state. And so, and this one item here about reports distributed can't exceed the total number of students is one of those validation rules that we implemented because it has been violated regularly in practice, in the period over the past few years. The total number of reports returned can't exceed the total number of students or the total number of reports distributed. And the reports returned are broken down by participation band. And so they must match, again, up in the header of the screen. You will get an hour band by hour band summary that will have been loaded directly from your submitted roster in the attendance file section when you uploaded your roster. And based on that breakdown of hour band, it will feed you advisory numbers here so that you're aware what the maximum number of reports returned is for each of those participating hour bands. And then in any category, the number of reports returned, the improved in homework participation, and or the improved behavior additionally can't exceed the student count in that reporting hour band. So again, you can see the progression here. Each category is feeding numbers in the system against which the subsequent categories are reported. And then certification. So just as a cautionary statement on the certification page, the certification page does track movement across previous sections of the data center, but all it does is record whether or not you successfully clicked on submit. It cannot be aware whether you have properly entered all of the data that you had collected. And so please consider that in making your decisions about clicking on submit or clicking on certification here on this last page, in this certification page. It's always good to do a cursory review of the activity, staffing, and other previous sections of the data entry site to make sure they're complete before certifying. Again, there are we do manual reviews of these data and follow up with grant directors who are connected to grants where the data appears to have been certified without having been completed. We also will revisit the issue with grant directors that are working with programs that appear to have all of the data submitted, but that simply never certified the results, both in an effort just to confirm that you are indeed done with the data submission, because the submission of your data to the federal offices occurs automatically in a scheduled time frame after you are done with data submission at the local level. And so we have a grace period of time after the end of every term to manually validate these things and to follow up with you to make sure that the data submission has been accurate before those automated processes trigger and those data are submitted to the federal government. There have been some questions that have been entered in the chat. I know there have been, and yes, noting that at the moment, yes, surveys are only reported for grades 1 through 5. And then Jessica, looking at your note here, the number of participants is by term. The system will be validating that it is true. The system will be validating survey counts against that total if there were fall only students in place. It happens less frequently, but yes, if there were fall only students in place, and if you have a concern about those validations or about your fall only students, feel free to contact our offices for follow-up. But we'll go back and check that validation rule to make sure that eventuality is accounted for. Any questions, concerns, comments? You can feel free to unmute at this point if you're interested. I think the system will allow you to do that. We're still getting used to the webinar controls for Teams, which are a relatively new tool for us to use for these purposes. But other questions, comments, concerns? If not, again, I can, yes. Gil, I don't know, you can contact the program office. Ryan and his team will be making a determination how it's shared out. I know at the very least that it will be made available on the 21st Century Resource pages on ISBE's site. Ryan, if you are with us out there, because I don't see your name on my screen, but if you're with us and have the capacity, is that something that you intend to share out via email potentially as well?
Yes. Hi. Hello, everybody. I apologize for being a couple of minutes late. Yes, thank you for that question. So we will certainly make it available. At the very least, we'll post it to our website and can notify everybody by email that we've done that. Depending on the format and size of the file and everything, we can see about
Right.
also sharing it directly via email as well. But we'll at least do the former there. So yeah,
right on the site, and if nothing else, a link right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Right. Because these files, the transcription files are not particularly heavy, but the video files themselves can sometimes be beefy.
Yep.
Other questions or concerns? This is just in terms of a synopsis and to revisit one of the points that I was making at the beginning, I hope none of you consider the effort here punitive. This is not being done to punish people for making data reporting errors or do the rest of it. To revisit a point I made at the beginning of the webinar, this is being done explicitly as an attempt to assist grants and centers that are having difficulty following these sometimes difficult data validation rules and the structure of data reporting for the U.S. Department of Ed. And we've heard from many a grant over time when we've gone back to work with them to try to clean data later in the process that a center coordinator may have left the program, a grant director may have left the program, and the records for some grantees are get increasingly inaccessible over time or increasingly less understandable over time given transitions in the program. So what we're attempting to do is bring the logic of the data validations to you directly at the point of data entry so that if there's an error, you can address it while you still have fresh records on hand, and and hopefully while the people who are still connected to the direct delivery of services during that term are available to answer questions and provide clarification. And again, for those I know it was included in some of the announcements leading to the webinar, but once this becomes available, please feel free to forward it to your center coordinators as well, because the site coordinators, because obviously for many of you as grant directors, you are in the same position that we are, in that your site coordinators may be sending you information that your ability to correct deteriorates markedly over time. And so feel free to forward this presentation, and feel free to have them contact our offices directly if you're interested in having them do so to get clarification, so that we can assist you in getting the cleanest data that you can get from your individual sites that are participating in the program as well. But if there aren't any other questions, and again, you can feel free to follow up with us at any point over time. I've already stopped the presentation, so if I type 21st CCLC at niu.edu, Gary, that's it, right? 21st CCLC at niu.edu. Oh, has Carrie left us? I think Carrie left us. I believe that's what it was there. And then 815-753-0978 as phone numbers that you can use to contact our offices. I've said them out loud, so they'll be in the transcript and in the recording, and they're here in the chat. And they're connected to most of the materials that we distribute or post on the ISB site anyway. Feel free to contact us at your convenience, and we'll follow up on anything that you've heard here that you might be confused about, or anything else that we can do to assist you in cleaning up your data and completing your submission successly. So thank you, everyone. And
may I say just a quick note?
Oh yeah,
Alan?
absolutely.
And then I do see Jessica Ortiz asked a follow-up question, so maybe she'll stick around after this quick note, and
sure,
we can try to give that clarity. But I do want to just first of all thank you, Alan, and your team, both for this webinar and for the preparations that went into it and the changes that were made to the tool to collect this information. And it's important work, and I really appreciate those efforts and everything that's being done. I also want to just reiterate what you said a moment ago about this is not punitive in any way. This is meant to be, just a way to help all grantees provide the most accurate data possible. as you report to us, we report to the federal government, to the U.S. Department of Education. They report to Congress, and obviously there's shared interest in the data that gets collected and sent up that chain to be accurate and to really highlight the successes of every program. So we really appreciate NIU's work to streamline it a little bit. There always is the possibility of growing changes as those processes change, but the goal here is really to make it a little bit easier to avoid some of those common mistakes. And again, like Alan said, and as I said a moment ago, not to be punitive in any way whatsoever. So,
Yeah.
but again, thank you, Alan, and to your team. I really appreciate everything.
Sure. Yeah, much to the contrary, this actually is a step in protecting these revenue streams, because one of the things that makes these revenue streams through these federal grant programs the most unstable is having garbage data at the federal level to use when program evaluators go to look at the program, and if they're seeing wholly implausible data and otherwise useless data for program evaluation come through during the data submission process, that's one of the flags that leads during program review to considerations of discontinuation of funding or restructuring of funding, not for individual grants. I'm not talking about for you at a statewide level, but at a federal level for the program in its entirety, particularly in this federal environment. And so, increasing accuracy in data submission is a significant step toward protecting the data streams for what all of us connected to 21st century think is a vital program. So,
yeah, and actually, I'll add just informally, what you're presenting today is part of the ongoing efforts to make sure that everything is as accurate as possible and clean as possible. And I'll share with the group just that we have gotten over the last year or so, that as changes have been made to continue with those efforts, we've gotten some recent informal but still valid feedback from the federal government, from their contractor who works with all the data and everything, that our process is getting cleaner, it's improving, that the data that we're submitting on a statewide level is more useful for the federal government and evaluating everything. So I know that it's Alan and his team who puts these changes into the system to make that collection happen, but everybody's participation and cooperation and collaboration and everything just contributes to that. So yeah, we're the ones on a statewide level who are being evaluated when those data are looked at on the federal level, but it all comes from the bottom up. So really appreciate everybody's efforts, and just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Great. And with that, I guess I'm going to stop the recording. And that